Welcome back. This is technically the second part to me making my first game called Grave Danger, or Dead Weight, or Peasant. I haven't really decided yet, but by the time this video comes out, I'm sure I will have decided. It was Grave Danger, wasn't it? Yeah, that name rules. In the game, you play as William, a gravedigger who's defending his town from waves of undead and medieval monsters. So I've made 2 game dev videos now, but one crucial thing has been missing, which is I haven't exactly made a game yet. I've made interactable experiences, but I'm not trying to make a Strand type game. I'm trying to make something that you can actually play and have fun with. So that's the goal for this video, to finish this game and to also upload it so you guys can play it for free. One big change has happened since my last video, which is I am not alone anymore in my game dev journey. You guys have been reaching out a bunch, and I finally have met my first teammate, Nick Glenn. Nick's a brilliant programmer and an overall great dude who's also patient and willing enough to teach an ignorant jackass like me. Nick, I know I just introduced you, but go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background.
Hey, my name's Nick. I've been programming for around 25 years. Most of that time's been spent making software and apps for big companies. But in recent years, I've gotten to switch to focusing on games and game technology, which is ultimately why I got started programming in the first place.
The dude can program in any language, it's nuts. Just to be clear, I'm still learning coding. I'm not bringing him on to replace me and do all the code himself, although he has done a lot on this project, especially in the later stages. But in the early stages, there was actually a lot of me coding with Nick over my shoulder, kind of guiding me through it and making sure I totally understood it. All right, so let's light this candle. The following is a little over 2 weeks of us making Grave Danger and an advertisement that starts right now. I'm sorry, but it's a cool one. It's not like a VPN. So some of you might have noticed that my desk setup has changed pretty dramatically, and that's thanks to LG, the sponsor of this video. I used to have a 49-inch super ultra wide big black monitor, and honestly, it was great. A little overkill, but it was great. But for a little while now, I've actually been wanting to switch back to a dual display monitor setup because as a video game YouTuber, it really isn't optimal to have that giant screen. But thankfully, LG hooked me up with not 1, but 2 of their 32-inch OLED monitors, the 32GS95UE gaming monitors. God, do I love how catchy tech product names are. But seriously, these are easily the best gaming monitors I've ever had in my life. I love these things. I love the look of them. I love the performance. I love the freaking stands. They're so clean and minimal. I'm seriously probably not gonna get an arm to hang these things. And yes, I did turn one of them vertical because I'm a real ass programmer now. Is staring at the very top of the screen like playing a PS2 in Target? Yeah, but it's nostalgic. These monitors offer some of the best image quality out there with minimal eye strain. These are actually my first OLED displays I've ever owned, and I totally get the hype now. The range of dynamic colors that you get in these monitors is just straight up beautiful. The dark inky blacks and dark scenes in movies and video games that I'm playing, it's just a truly immersive experience whether I'm watching Dune 2 or editing the pores on my giant nose in DaVinci. The quality is just unmatched. The real gamers out there should note that it also has a 0.03 millisecond refresh rate to minimize any input lag. And these monitors also have a secret weapon called dual mode that with just the press of a button turns this 240 Hz UHD display, wait, let me show you, into an FHD 480 Hz display. I've never experienced something so smooth. It's just nuts. I feel like I could put my hand through this monitor and not in a fit of rage. And the list of pros for this monitor just go on and on. They got amazing speakers in here that use a system called Pixel Sound that come directly out of the panel. The monitors also have HDR, FreeSync, G-Sync, all those quality gaming goodies. I seriously cannot recommend this product more. And if you want to know more, you can check out the link in my description to see LG's gaming monitors and all that they have to offer to upgrade your gaming experience. Seriously, I cannot recommend them enough. Thank you so much to LG for sponsoring this video. Now back to me making games. So day 1, in classic fashion, I wanted to scrap everything I had made so far and start from scratch because I wanted to know how Nick would have done what I had so far. But Nick even stopped me there and was like, before we get started, you know that you've been playing with fire the entire time you've been coding? And I was like, no, how's that? And he's like, because you're not using Git. So you could lose your whole project pretty easily, which by the way, could have happened. On day 13, a storm came through town and knocked my power out. And when I got back online, it had corrupted my entire game. But luckily, I could revert it back with GitHub and I barely lost any work. Things like GitHub have always scared me because as an outsider looking in, it looks like a place that's just filled with veteran coders and neckbeards trying to show off their big brains.
Maybe it was— Shut up!
When all I came here for was to download a friggin' New Vegas mod, and the website's like, let me guess, you're here to adjust the code. And I'm like, no, I'm just here to download the mod. Where is it? Oh, it's hidden in this drop-down menu? Why are you trying to hide it? There's clearly room for a download button. Anyway, GitHub and systems like it are actually really interesting to me because it answers a lot of the questions that I've had about larger games being made. How do you have a ton of people all building parts of a game and updating it together? How do you experiment on large portions of the game without losing all your work? Do you just overwrite everything like my little brother did on my Ratchet & Plank Going Commando save that I'll never forgive him for? Tommy? If only there were a GitHub for a PS2 memory card. An example question that I've thought of is, take GTA 6 for example. Thousands of people working on the biggest game that's ever gonna come out in the next 10 years. Can one person at Rockstar just corrupt the entire game or accidentally delete everything altogether at once? Nick, could this happen? Is GTA 6 in danger?
Although anything's possible, the chance that that's going to happen is extremely unlikely. Any business, especially any business worth their salt, who's got multi-millions of dollars of money invested into something like GTA 6, absolutely has some kind of version control software like Git in place to prevent this sort of thing from happening.
So yeah, we're using a system like that. And I'm gonna say this first, it sounds complicated, but it's really not, I promise. But there's definitely some incoming jargon coming at you, so get ready. So we're using Git, which is a program that as a newbie, I can't really see, but it keeps track of the code that we're writing and all the changes that we make to it. And then we're connecting Git to GitHub, which is basically like a cloud that has a repository, which is basically a fancy word for saying a folder that holds your project. Which means if we were to do something stupid and like break our project locally, like if we were to do something like this, which is a joke that Nick told me to put in here. Nick, that better have worked, 'cause I don't get it. If it was ruined, we could go to GitHub and pull down a previous version of our game that Git kept track of and barely lose any progress and keep on working like nothing happened. It's like walking into a room in Fallout and stepping on a landmine and then reverting your save, having all your limbs and stim packs fully intact. And instead of using Godot's built-in script editor, we started using VS Code, which does the majority of the same thing. This code editor comes with a tab for source control that allows us to work with Git in a visual way. And I know I'm losing some of you, but just hang on, okay? Get back in here. Don't be a coward. This allows me and Nick to branch off and make separate updates and changes to the game and then send each other those changes through commits and then merge or discard them back into the main game that we're on the same page with now. I hope you can see the usefulness here. Most game studios, big or small, have a system like this. So if you want to make a game, you should definitely be trying to implement it in your process. Trust me, you will not regret it. And I'll try to drop some links in the description to help you set it up. A lot of the first day was actually just going over what I had made so far on my own and asking Nick a ton of clarifying questions for things that I didn't fully understand. Nick has taught me some deep concepts, but also some more elementary ones.
The alligator eats the bigger thing.
And we also started prototyping some concepts that I hadn't been able to figure out on my own. Like remember in the last video I brought up a game called Madness? In that game you could move your hand in a circle around your character, and I tried to do this on my own for days but couldn't figure it out, and then Nick showed me how to do it in about 30 minutes, which made me feel like a brainless chimp. I mean, great. What?
All right.
Dude, it actually works. What? We then hopped into GitHub where I made my account, connected our project, got the whole lore and backstory about the octopus cat logo, and got set up to where we could send versions of the game back and forth to each other and called it a day. We got the hand moving around the player and it looked magical. Dude, by the way, if I got to this step completely on my own, I would be here for like an hour and a half just being like, it's literally perfect. And then with just a couple more lines of code, Nick showed me how to flip my hand sprite over the x-axis, which is such a small thing, but it brings so much polish to your character. It was starting to look so good, but compared to the last video, this was starting to change the concept that I had in mind for the game I wanted to make in a good way. Because I asked Nick, he saw my first video, I was like, what do you think about this like Madness inspired game that I was thinking about? Could we make that in the span of 2 weeks? And he was like, yep. So we immediately started experimenting with a throwing knife mechanic. It started off a little rough, so we had to hit up Google. Even a seasoned pro like Nick has to, give it a goog every now and then, which we did, and after a few minutes, we were able to get the knife to be able to drop out of our hand. And then we got it to throw. Kind of. Whoa. Oh, I can, dude, I have like the force. The system that Nick and I, mainly Nick here, were setting up was making it so the velocity was being determined by how fast we were whipping our mouse across our character. And it started off a little too fast. It was like shooting a gun. So we tightened it up and got to a place that felt pretty good. I had learned so much this day, and we were only on our second day. I spent this whole day just showering in the fountain of Nick's knowledge. But eventually, I was drenched. My head was too full of knowledge, and I had to cut off the water supply. By the way, what is ArgV or whatever?
Oh, ArgV is Git is the program name. Okay. The first argument is
Nick, let me say too, by the way, we are at the limits of how much I can learn in one day. So remember a few minutes ago where I said I wanted to start the game from scratch? I meant it. But Nick had a better idea. Instead of just throwing everything away, I should just make a legacy folder and throw all that I had made into that, just in case we could steal some code that was actually functioning correctly and save us some time. So before getting into the game, we actually just started mapping out what we wanted this game to look like. This was super fun. We were both throwing out a bunch of creative ideas. And this is also where I got to see that Nick had surprisingly good ideas. And that's not a jab at Nick. That's a jab at actually myself having control freak tendencies. I'm a YouTuber, and in the past, I've tended to work alone. I have had an editor named Harrison that's helped me out in a couple videos. Shout out Harrison. But outside of Harrison, let's just say I'm a bit of a lone wolf. Don't get too close. I might hurt you. No, I'm sorry. And just being totally honest, I've been curious/cautious to see how I'd react to hearing out other people's ideas about the games that they would want to make. But brainstorming with Nick was a sigh of relief. Like, most of our tastes line up, and he had a lot of genuinely good ideas that have ended up in the game. And with that, the boys got to work. We started ripping out parts of the old game, like the movement system, and tossing it into a new player script, and also grabbing that new grab and throwing mechanic that we had just prototyped. Here's what we had at the end of the day of our first day starting from scratch. Yeah, not bragging. With all those storms that we were chasing, brainstorms that is, that night I got to work on a bunch more art, thinking of all the new creatures, buildings, and items the game would need. Turns out I wasn't the only one excited and working into the night. As I was drawing my silly cartoons, Nick implemented an entire faux gravity system. Whoa. Damn you, Nicholas. Oh, and he got around to making a potential lighting system, and he also added a cool resistance feature to the hand moving around. So he started explaining to me how like this whole gravity system worked, and this resistance feature he added to the hand, and I was with it up until he brought up this Wikipedia page where I completely checked out. Oh my gosh, no. What the f is this symbol? What is that? In all seriousness, I was so impressed and I was ready to get to work. Oh, and another thing, gosh, Nick also added controller support that day. And this was a very surreal feeling for me to play my game with this Xbox controller. Like, I don't mean to get too existential here, but I spent most of my impressionable years playing video games with this controller. And now I'm playing my own game with it. It's just a weird feeling. Maybe other game devs experienced this. I mean, it's some old magic. Day 5, Nick did some work, adding in hit and hurt boxes in the blink of an eye. He also added in a potion that you could consume. He made the throwing dagger be able to spin when you throw it, along with a tug every time you try to stab an enemy with a knife. He also got the second hand to appear on the hammer when you grabbed it. It just... Look, he did a lot. I'm not saying he didn't do a lot, okay? But you know, I was also doing stuff. Like, you know, I put the lips on William. He doesn't talk. So what if he doesn't talk? What, are we gonna make him look like Deadpool in X-Men Origins? You're welcome. By the way, I'm also directing. You gotta think, every time Nick is making all this stuff, guess who has to review it all? I have to be like, oh, this looks good. This guy's made another thing. This looks good. It's a lot of pressure. Next thing my pathetic ass got around to making was the health bars for the enemies. And before you know it, we are slicing and dicing our first enemy. There's a big moment.
Cool.
First kill of the game, first blood. He needs to patch him up. Day 6 was just a solo work day, and I was tired of this primitive little campsite that we had for a game. So I started to dump all the art assets that I had made into the game and start regioning them out. Day 7, I was working with Nick and I was trying to get my game to start up, but it just wouldn't work. Turns out I just needed to restart Godot. And apparently that's a common fix for like most game engines, is just restarting your game engine and launch it again. Right after we fixed that, we found one of the most ridiculous bugs that our game has had.
Yeah.
Not saying it needs to be in it, but yeah. Is it getting smaller, or am I crazy?
Wait.
The knife is getting smaller. What?
I was...
It's gonna disappear out of existence. Honey, we shrunk the knives. Anyway, I got to work on a bunch of starter animations that we needed to get in, while Nick was messing around with some lighting until our day was done and the weekend began. Starting now, you'll start to notice that these days are going to start to speed up, because at this point we've got a lot of the groundwork out of the way. That day I set up the shopkeeper that would appear after every wave, and at this point we had a lot of parts to the game, but we hadn't put any of it really together. So that's where we started the next day. Nick threw in a starter scene, along with some bold art choices he put in, which made me start questioning his entire taste, but he affirmed it was purely placeholder. At this point, we could start the game, pick up weapons, and walk through this gate, initiating the first wave of surviving, where zombies chased us through an open desert. Day 10 was updating the world a little bit. I made a house, we got zombies getting hurt and bashing them with a hammer, and we also tried to mess with some like 2D normal maps to try to add lighting and shadows to our characters, but that had some mixed results. Day 11, we got a bow in with a pretty interesting shooting mechanic where you'd pick up the bow with a left-click press, right-click press to grab the string, and move your mouse to pull the string back. But pulling the string back locked where you were aiming, so you kind of had to like strafe to aim, which I thought was interesting, but I wasn't totally sold on it. So me and Nick started debating over it.
I'm loving the debate. Great minds battling it out. And I've got a front row seat.
And eventually we decided, how about we put the crossbow in with my shooting mechanic, which would just be left click to grab it and just hold right click to start pulling the arrow back so you can still aim with your crossbow. And we'll just leave the way the bow is until we get to game testing, and we'll let the game testers react to it. Adults making decisions after a healthy amount of conflict. Day 12 was just another smooth day of world building. I set up the stagecoach, threw some houses, barrels, and boxes in the game, and the game was starting to look pretty good. Besides the gate. Day 13 was particle effects day. These things are so fun to experiment with, and I feel like I've only like scraped the surface of what I could do with these things. This is where we're gonna do our fire, smoke, spark, and blood effects. Nick showed me how to do one by making a fire and ember effect for our light posts, and it looked awesome. Then he let me off the chain and I made my own first particle effect for the shopkeeper's lantern, which, not to pat myself on the back, but I think looks pretty sick. Then I started building out our level, our whole village, which once you get the art assets and the collision set up, it is funny how this whole level design stuff is just like adult Legos. Once that was all done, it's crazy how much this really started feeling like a real game. Day 14 was simply sound hunting day, looking over every asset and action in the game and finding the sound that it needed. Day 15 was a pretty simple polish day before the big day, Day 16, game test day. I sent a group text out to all my gaming buddies asking if they could help test the game that I've spent the last 2 weeks of my life pouring my heart into, and one got back to me. Thank you, Chris. The rest of you are dead to me. We also got DevDuck to test it out. Of all people, I recently met DevDuck. He's another game dev YouTuber. You've probably heard of him. He's also making a game called Dauphin. Seriously, go check out his channel and his game. The dude's awesome. Game testing is such an interesting experience. In a lot of ways, it's somebody telling you that your baby is ugly, and it also feels like singing in front of your friends and then being like, so what do you think? If there was an ending, would you want to get to it?
No.
We knew the game wasn't finished, but it is crazy what you take for granted while developing a game. Like, fortunately, everybody knew how to grab items, but no one figured out how to consume our health potion, which was grabbing it and putting it to your mouth and releasing. It's so funny watching somebody test your game because you kind of have to remain silent and let them do what they would do naturally. So somebody will like find a chest and walk up to it, and there's just like a bead of sweat running down my face, just like, just grab the lid, open it up. Or there's a situation like, I don't know, when we were testing the bows, and when somebody tested the crossbow, they got it right away. And when they picked up Nick's bow, nobody really got it. And it took every bone in my body not to lean over and go, I told you so! And it's not about winning. It's not about winning the argument. It's beside the point. Still won. So every day since, which is almost a week now, I've had to start working on writing and making this video. Sponsor. Time limit. So Nick's mainly taken over the past week, getting it polished and bringing it to a finished state. I've snuck in a few hours where I could, and it's been busy getting to this finish line. So without further ado, this is Grave Danger V1. So here's the best part. You guys can play it right now for free. I mean, not right now, let me finish the video first. But we hope you like it. Let us know what it's like in the comments. Go easy on me, it is my first game. Also, Nick threw in a last minute secret into the game, so I'm curious to see if you guys can find it. And also to my Patrons, take a closer look at the graves and go see if you can find yourself on there. I know it's putting your names on a grave so you're like dead to me. So you're welcome. I'm exceptionally proud of the work that we've done. You know, this is definitely a collaboration, no doubt. I put in a ton of work, but it can't be understated the work that Nick put into this game. It's remarkable, and it gets me so excited about the next games that we're gonna make together. I'll be honest, We've already started making our next game, and it's in 3D this time. And it has co-op, because Nick can apparently program that, because he's an insane man. I want to emphasize something that Unreal Sensei says in most of his videos. There's never been a better time to get into game design if you're interested. You can start alone, you can start with a buddy, you can start with a group of friends. It's just getting more accessible and easier by the day. So I encourage you to give it a try. For me, it's been super fun and extremely rewarding. Keep an eye out for the next video that's gonna be coming out soon. Make sure you subscribe so you can see it in your feed, because it's gonna be a big announcement. And it might be kind of obvious what it is by these videos that I've been making, but also subscribe because, man, we're so close to 300,000 and I've been stuck at 200,000 forever. Oh, and I do wanna clarify, like, the next video is gonna be a video game essay. My channel's not gonna only turn into game dev. Thanks again to LG for hooking me up with these badass monitors and supporting my channel. And thanks to you for watching my video if you got this far. And I'll see you in the next one.
Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact, and that is everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you.